Final part of Volume 7. Did it in less than last volume, even though it's the same amount of episodes. Don't ask me how or why, I'm just weird. I like that they show Pietro giving his space to strangers to keep them warm, but I also feel like this should have been a little bit more crowded. I can't be bothered by this though, this is fine. Wow, last time I was just spitballing by saying Weiss shows up 2 minutes in, but she actually shows up 1 minute and 50 seconds after the intro ends. And yes, Weiss fixes everything immediately. I don't think I gave this credit before, but I like that Jacques was playing a game of chess by himself. Like, normally I'd say, "Why the fuck was he doing this, mate?" But usually, it doesn't make sense. But for this character, I feel like it fits. Jacques likes to think he's smart and all. He's a cunning, strategic bastard. So chess fits his personality. But he's also alone. Nobody's really there for him. Not his baby mama, not his little shitly, not his daughters, not even his servants. But at the same time, he doesn't care. Instead of wallowing, or willowing, in his loneliness, he just plays by himself. It both shows how little he cares about others and his arrogance, as it implies he thinks the only person smart enough to play with him is himself. After all, while Whitley wouldn't offer to play with him, Jacques also could have asked and probably would have gotten a game. This further helps imply just how little he actually thinks of his son. Did Weiss actually summon her knight without line of sight, without any hand or body motions, with or without Myrtanasta? What? Oh, Maria almost got a line. Almost. So, like, the warehouse incident got Grimm to come in, like, instantly. But this mass hysteria takes nearly 10 minutes before the alarms go off.
I used to think you were hiding something to protect yourself. But I can tell there's something much bigger going on here. Now I think it's to protect something else.
This one line from Robin is probably the only memorable, important time someone takes Ironwood's side. Like, people still fucking hate Ironwood. You can't feel anything for him here. He's gotta decide between saving Mantle and protecting Atlas. Keep in mind that if Atlas is compromised, it's not just Atlas that's fucked. If Atlas is compromised, cause it's hovering above Mantle, you know, without Mantle, Atlas would survive. But without Atlas, Mantle gets crushed by the big floating city. He doesn't either go, fuck Mantle. He's struggling between whether he should take a risk to save Mantle, or not take a risk and ensure Atlas survives and that Mantle won't be crushed by Atlas, which does reduce the way Mantle could be fucked up in half. Ironwood is the best written character of the series, and I'll have no arguments. Unless you want to argue. I mean, free opinions are great. Don't be a dick about it. Also, I was terrified when this camera was panning it would be RWBY who walks up and calms him down, but thank Primus it was Oscar. I don't give two shakes of a sperm whale's jumbo cock about Oscar, but I like that it was him. And I like that this Oscar speech... And I like this Oscar speech more than any of the last volume's RWBY speeches. He brings up past issues, why ask for Osborn's advice when you're going against his ideas, why give up when your plan was going to deal with these issues you're facing anyway, why keep secrets from Atlas and Mantle when they're at risk of both collapsing anyway. I don't even mind RWBY's involvement. I know RWBY speech was somewhat of a running thing in the last volume's Everything Wrong With, but her just coming up and saying that she's there for him is fine. It probably would have worked just as fine, if not better, if it was Penny or Winter or even Weiss, but I'm fine with RWBY, and even her rally cry. I mean, she's only shown directing it to her team and Penny. Please tell me there's not going to be any more nonsense fucking romantic bullshit between these zero chemistry characters. Instead of having RWBY talk to Ironwood before leaving the room, say she stays in the room while everyone goes to deal with the problem, so she can explain to Ironwood after he's done, she goes and talks to Oscar about it. Oscar. Why not Yang? Her sister. But yeah, this means that RWBY gets off scot-free from repercussions directly due to her actions. Even Ironwood is more angry about Yang and Blake leaking government information than RWBY keeping this massive secret from him that literally undoes the core concept of his plans involving Salem's destruction. Although I'm fine with Ironwood's immediate response of just putting it off till his current problem is dealt with. You see, I'm conflicted about Neo and Cinder showing up so late. On one hand, it makes them seem lazy for having done nothing all volume, and they haven't done anything. On the other hand, they're not being there allows for scenes to be focused on both other villains and other characters generally. I think the biggest issue is that Volume 6 hyped them up as being the main threat, but then really not until the end, and that's a flaw of Volume 6. I still hate Cinder's new outfit though, it's horrendous. Okay, so why doesn't Neo just impersonate someone of a high rank? Like, not someone explicit like Winter, but why doesn't she pretend to be some random Atlas fucker who has the authority to be in the area with Freya? Maybe not in there with Freya, but just the kind of person who could follow people who know where Freya is without arousing suspicions. Then once she knows, they can just break in and get the Winter powers. Because then Winter and Penny wouldn't be in the way. Cinder would have 2 times maiden power. She would be the single strongest character that isn't Salem or the gods. And Neo was tasked to get information on the Relic of Knowledge, so why did that take so long? It's been a few weeks since they got there. Why couldn't she just find out whenever by just following Team RWBY? The people Cinder know had the lamp last? Neo seems really dumb to have taken this long to figure it out. Anyway, let's get on. So the majority of this episode is meaningless Grimm fighting, and Grimm fighting is boring. At least, I think it is. The Grimm always get obliterated with ease, and only one Grimm this whole volume puts up any meaningful fight. Also, no humans are seen dying. I can't see any corpses, nothing's on fire. There's probably fire in some scenes, but the majority of it's not on fire. So I don't really get the impression this attack is that bad, because all we see is Grimm running around and dying. What I'm bothered by is that we didn't really get to see the Happy Huntresses fighting as well. After all, it's considered the one purpose Grimm fighting has had in recent times is showing off a new character's abilities, or showing off new abilities of an established character. Like the Ace Ops this volume, they did it for Weiss, and the one Grimm fight of Volume 5 was just to show off Weiss can summon around Magigas now. They couldn't do it for Maria because of her silver eyes, and the apathy were, in my opinion, unsuccessful, but were an attempt at something new that I commend the effort of. And they didn't really fight Team RWBY. Oh no, Nora and Weiss are branching out and working with other people that aren't their usual partners. That's what Marrow suggested, and we know that's not a good thing. Alright, I'll calculate this for fun. So for this, we're going to be assuming the similar sort of weight to an African bush elephant. We can't say for sure how heavy Grimm are because we have no idea what they're even made of. Elm here is apparently 196 centimeters tall. This elephant looks roughly 3 elms long, making it 588 centimeters, or 5.88 meters, or 19 feet long. Fittingly around the same length of a very large African bush elephant, which can weigh up to 6,000 kilograms. First off, the stopping force. It looks to travel about 20 meters in about 5 seconds, which is about 4 meters per second, which is about half the speed of an actual African bush elephant, but still. This means this beast was carrying 48,000 joules of kinetic energy. An elm brings it to a complete stop in about 0.5 seconds, which is a deceleration rate of 17.88 meters squared. That means Elm exerted a force of 107,280 newtons, or roughly 10.9 tons of force. But then she throws it straight up as well. In 3 seconds, the elephant travels up so high that it's roughly in line with these buildings. Scaling to Blake, that means it traveled 10 meters in only 3 seconds, which is a velocity of 3 meters per second, so Elm threw it up with 27,000 joules. That's a lot.
He's doing it.
Yes, RWBY. This was his plan the whole time. This is what he agreed to do last episode. This is really a surprise, RWBY. So why do some of these screens show him up close but others don't? Wouldn't it be better for his goal of making Mantle trust him if they all showed him with Robin's semblance? Oh, but they couldn't, because then he couldn't lure Watts, but what makes people trust him? Like, you think the reason people believe his ridiculous story is the fact that they can see Robin's hand and that he's telling the truth. The general public in areas that wouldn't be able to see that, which is the majority of the areas, why would they believe his bullshit? And if it's changing, like it's actually changing between up close to Ironwood and then generally showing both of them, like they all display the same thing, we just happen to only see the full view when we're in this location, then Watts should notice that and be like, oh, it's a trap. Watts is an idiot here. Tyrion's voice acting is still amazing.
Our tin soldier's heart has cost him his mind.
Wizard of Oz. You get it?
You need to keep their attention on Mantle for as long as possible.
Yeah, he tells them to do that, but then Tyrion immediately gets captured and fails. None of that clever stuff has any bearing on Mantle either. That's not a flaw of the volume, it's just Tyrion kind of sucked the job. So hold up, what was Penny doing this whole time? Ah, here it is. The famed teleporting Goliath. This species of Goliath is known for its ability to vanish between cuts. As seen here, 3 Goliaths charge, but then Elm fires 2 missiles, 2 Goliaths detonate, and the third one, gone. It's like it was never even there. Ooh. So Penny and Harriet go after the Goliath, and while they're getting their shit beat in, RWBY just stands there and takes a deep breath. Now, I'd assume she's going for a Silver Eyes with this thing, but she doesn't. Why doesn't she Silver Eye this thing? No, she doesn't. Like, is it distracting her? Does she need to concentrate? Because a few episodes later, yeah. Why, like, and even then, like, how is it breaking a concentration? You're gonna tell me that Goliath is quieter than this fucking thing? And there's no cost at all to using the Silverize, so she has no reason to be like, I can't just Silverize all my problems away. Ruby's plan's cool and all, because it's an actual fucking plan. But why doesn't Penny just fly underneath it and go for its belly? That's not armored, and they haven't shown its skin, flesh, whatever it is, being durable enough to take that. We only see it taking blunt force shots from Harriet and getting attacked by Penny in the skull. It'd be fine if they used the tusk to go through the skull, because it's armored, but it would have been easier to convey that's what they have to do. Like, they could either show Penny stabbing its flesh and not accomplishing anything, or just have it be armored all the way around its body. Because RWBY seems to combine two separate but equally viable plans, using the Grimm's own durable material to break through its armor, and also attacking weak spots that aren't armored, and just fuses them. It's not that it's a bad plan, it's just that either of those options would have worked. This, while functional, probably isn't the best. Still, I'm not going to actively make it seem like I dislike it, because RWBY actually came up with a plan. Those don't happen very often in this show. This is still a fantastic setup for a fight. Ironwood's much stronger, but with simpler weapons. Watts is smarter with technology and control of the environment, but he wouldn't stand a chance in a fistfight. See, if this was the kind of sins video people think of when they hear everything wrong with, I'd have to remove every sin for Caleb Hyles, just morally. It seems a little silly that Watts has to count gunshots out loud. It just seems a bit silly, like he can't just think it in his head. Despite this battle not being particularly flashy or cool, I do enjoy the simplicity. It's a gunfight, but one guy can crush a watermelon with his penis, and the other one can control the environment. Watts survives this, even after his aura's broken. So this isn't a problem with the series, but Versus Battle Wiki lists Watts at building level because he can harm Ironwood. But he doesn't. His durability might be large building level, and maybe his gun too, because that probably can hurt Ironwood. But him physically, come on, he can't punch hard enough to do any meaningful damage to the guy. Despite having not tried to pull his arm out yet, the burns are already there. I mean, that's where they should be, based on where the lock started and where his arm is here. Did they cut out a shot of Ironwood's first attempt? Or did his first pull not hurt at all, and only when it got to here, he was like, oh, yep, that hurts. Like this scene with Watts where he might have yanked in the background of this scene while Watts was on the ground, but we don't hear the sizzling or the straining sounds that happen the next few times he does it. And Watts should have really just reloaded his gun and killed Ironwood. Or if he doesn't want to kill him, kneecap him. Come on, Watts. After all this guy's been through, you think this is gonna stop him? And for some reason, Ironwood doesn't kill Watts. And, like, I'm fine with that because I like Watts, but why doesn't he? It's not like he has moral issues with killing his enemies, because he's a military leader. He'd have to be a shitty military leader if he morally isn't willing to kill someone. Like, if Watts was just a guy that just is his enemy, then maybe, okay, imprison him. But this guy can hack anything in the entire city. Both cities, Mantle and Atlas, everything in Solitos. He can hack all of it. He's the reason for all the shit that went down in Beacon. Kill him. This Tyrion fight is actually really well animated. Look, I get why Ironwood's freaking out, but at the same time, it's funny to think that I can explain this scene as a grown man condemns a city to death because he found a chess piece on his desk. How does Cinder get from up here to a position where she can track and follow Winter? Neo is off getting the relic, so it's not her. Is Cinder just gonna bust through that window and follow Winter? I like that there's a better explanation, but I'd rather pretend that's what Cinder does. Ironwood's face here is priceless. So here's the thing. If Blake and Yang didn't break Ironwood's trust for arbitrary reasons, this would be fine. Because Yang and Blake breaking Ironwood's trust had no rhyme or reason. They know Ironwood. They understand him personally. However, they don't know Robin Hill. At least they didn't at that time. And as I said prior, she could have just been some power-hungry bitch pretending to care about Mantle to get votes. If they hadn't broken his trust, then the events leading up to this would have still happened. What Robin said here could have easily come from RWBY or Yang and achieved the same result. And, like, the only other thing she does is lead to Clover's death. So if they didn't do that, Robin wouldn't be there, possibly, and Clover wouldn't be dead. Ugh. Ugh. Then when they come here, Ironwood has no reason not to trust them. Yes, there's a thing with Salem's immortality, but that's something that doesn't even bring it up. He mentions it in one moment amongst a list of things that he actually goes on about. With his trust, RWBY should be able to explain clearly and concisely that Cinder Fall would most likely be going for the Winter Maiden's powers. RWBY already knows Cinder has maiden abilities, and that she stole the powers from Amber. Or she should, considering it'd be really strange if Jean didn't tell them what he saw. They're like, why, how did Piri get in that situation where she died? And John's like, But then they could just use their brains to figure out all the stuff about maidens. I don't think we actually see the specific point in time where they learn about the maidens, but it's completely reasonable that Crow explained it off screen, because it's a pretty unimportant thing to show the audience. We just assume it. Then Ironwood could just coordinate everyone to go back up Winter. All of them combined could take Cinder down, or just RWBY on her own, because she can look at her and kill her. And the old problem? Solved. TLDR, if Yang and Blake trusted Ironwood, they wouldn't even have had this problem. And if the next volume does not address this, I will be bothered. Next volume needs a scene where Yang and Blake's lies are called out by the teammates. Then one of them could call out RWBY in response as well, and the protagonist will actually argue. Conflict. Now, yes, Salem does physically appear too, but it's implied the only reason the seer burst out is because all of the fighting that happens between them. Wouldn't have happened otherwise, and the seer wouldn't have come out. And yeah, Salem on the big fucking whale is a problem, but then they'd be unified. The whole reason Ironwood turned on Mantle and on RWBY is partially RWBY's fault. If they hadn't told any of their lies or broke his trust, they could have easily helped maintain Ironwood's mental state and help him through the situation. And I know someone will say Team RWBY were justified, but up until this point, Ironwood was doing little wrong. He was putting some pressure on Mantle and Atlas, but it was for their own well-being, and it wasn't enough to actually attract Grimm yet, at least not in large droves. RWBY lying about Salem has no point. They had no reason not to trust him and committed the same betrayal of trust that Ozpin did. Yang and Blake going against what Ironwood wanted also accomplishes nil. Robin most likely would have agreed to work with Ironwood when he decided she was worth trusting. Which, knowing how he was responding positively and understandably to what Team RWBY was saying up till this point, they probably could have convinced him once Robin was behind bars, especially because he'd be able to talk to her directly in person and gauge her character from that. Alright, this scene. I better explain why I was laughing at this when I first watched it. It's not because I like seeing RWBY in pain, or because I like the concept of a 15-year-old girl being reminded of her mum dying and crying because of it, but here's the thing. RWBY's only ever brought up her mother a few times, once at the grave in the trailer with questionable canonicity, and briefly a few times. It's just like out of nowhere. Nah. But you know what? She's never shown to be sad or to be mentally unable to take the idea of her mother being dead. She acts throughout the series to have accepted it. There's no hint at all until now that she gives a shit about her mother being dead. Salem just says, "Your mom dead," and RWBY cries. Now, maybe it's because she didn't know her mother failed against Salem. No, she does, because she knows Summer was part of Ozpin's little anti-Salem member group, and that Summer failed to stop Salem because she'd have to be a total idiot not to realize that. Like, she now knows her mother died for nothing. But that doesn't mean that. It just means her mother failed to stop Salem. It doesn't mean she died not accomplishing something. But you know what? It's not that RWBY cries that makes me laugh. No. I mean, it partially is, because the voice acting and animation make this really funny to me for some reason. But moments later, she gets back up and she's just not bothered by it at all. She just gets over it, like...
You just said that. To lure out Watts.
Yang says this like she has something against what Ironwood did, but was it really wrong to do this? If they were allied and trusted each other, and had stopped Cinder and Neo after this, then this lie would have no repercussions. Oh yeah, and who's the reason supplies weren't being taken to Amity on time and were delaying the project? Oh yeah! And even now, he's still trusting Team RWBY with information. He doesn't go against them yet. Ironwood doesn't go against Team RWBY until they act against him. You know, I don't necessarily think I agree with Ironwood's choice, but I understand it. If he could get Atlas so far up that Salem would never get to it, if Salem could never get to Atlas, and all 4 of the people in there that work for her are all dead, sorry, 3, because Tyrion's currently in the snow. If all 3 of the people who are in Atlas right now were all died, all killed, were all died, if they were all offed, and he got Atlas all the way up into space, and it was able to survive in a location Salem could never reach, humanity will survive. At least 2 of the relics will never reach Salem, and 1 of the maidens will never reach Salem. Of course, that makes sense, but do the ends justify the means? Is the sacrifice he's making here worth ensuring that Salem cannot win? Is it worth risking Salem winning to save everyone, or is it better to make sure Salem will never be able to win, but also sacrifice a lot of lives to do that. This could spark fantastic moral dilemmas and philosophical discussions in the series, but what do we get?
Oh, excellent philosophical points.
Alright, let's discuss the problems with the Team RWBY vs Ace Ops fight. I know everyone who knows my review is going to be waiting for this. Mainly, Team RWBY winning when they shouldn't. And Team RWBY, well, like, they obliterate the Ace Ops. That's my problem. That's my biggest issue. The Ace Ops winning would make more sense, but Team RWBY winning can also make sense. It's the way Team RWBY win so easily. And let's talk about the reasons people have given for why Team RWBY won. And if you like this fight and you don't want to hear reasons that you either already disagree with or have explanations that you personally are fine with, and I don't want to pretend like either of those two positions to be in, liking this fight and understanding the reasons but not caring, or liking the fight and disagreeing with those reasons. I don't want to pretend like those are bad things to feel. If you feel either of those ways, that's fine. I'll put a timestamp to skip past my ramblings for you people, so you don't have to deal with my bullshit. Number 1. Narratively, Team RWBY have to. Number 2. The Ace Ops were holding back. Number 3. The Ace Ops didn't want to kill Team RWBY, but Team RWBY were fighting to kill the Ace Ops. Number 4. The fables of the Ace Ops are based on somehow other reason. Number 5. The Ace Ops didn't work together while Team RWBY did. Number 6. The Ace Ops trained Team RWBY to their level but didn't improve at all themselves. Number 7. The Ace Ops were internally conflicted. Number 8. The Ace Ops let them win. Number 9. The power of friendship. Number 10. They are Ironwood's little puppets, and that inherently makes them bad people who will lose. First off, let's explain why Team RWBY beating the Ace Ops is a less likely scenario. The Ace Ops are considered the most skilled and most powerful team of huntsmen in the entire kingdom. They are Ironwood's personal strike team. They were chosen specifically because their abilities work together flawlessly. They are professional huntsmen who have actually finished academy training. They have all the training that RWBY never got. They only got 1 year of it. And they have more years of experience. Team RWBY beating them is not only weird because they are below the Ace Ops in experience, skill, and probably teamwork, as Team RWBY have only been together as a unit for 200 days, keeping in mind that there are about 300 days between those 200 days where they're separated completely. The Ace Ops are most likely a team that have fought together and been together for a lot longer. If you're wondering about the timeline thing, I'll put a link somewhere to the two timeline videos that explain why I say they've spent a whole year separate. Also, this would put the skill and power level of each individual RWBY member as the same region, maybe not exactly, but the same general region as Crow and Clover. Now I know what you're probably thinking, but Clover is way more skilled than the rest of the Ace Ops. But is he? We have no evidence to say that he is. Yes, he fought Crow and Tyrion at the same time, but not only did he lose that fight, but he failed to break the aura of either of them, he died, and he took a lot of hits which really mattered because he lost his aura while dealing little hits back on them. That, and he clearly relies on his luck a lot. Him being the leader doesn't mean anything to imply he's better either. Jean is the leader of Team Juniper, while being the weakest by far, and Penny probably wasn't the leader of her team, but she should have been the strongest. He doesn't actively show any feats that put him leagues above the Ace Ops. The Ace Ops are the most powerful and skilled huntsmen in Atlas, and RWBY are above them. This puts RWBY at least within a similar region to Crow and non-Maiden Raven. And if you don't see how that obliterates any remaining tension of the show, keep in mind this means that at least 2 members of Team RWBY combined could defeat Tyrion. Yeah. And I feel like I'll have to respond to some of Mediocrity 4's arguments as to why this makes sense as well. First off, for someone saying speed, strength, and durability are all surface level, it's funny that he bases RWBY winning on her just being faster. That's not all he does, but that's one of the things he brings up. Now, one of the things he brings up is that power scaling reduces things to a numbers game, but that's not the case. First off, don't bring the Verse community to this. It has no bearing how skilled Iron Fist is. He will have no chance against Dr. Manhattan or Thor, with the exception of plot convenience and plot-induced stupidity. When characters show off power scaling within a series that's exceptional, it's not immediately a flaw. Bakugo has very few feats that put him at the level of Deku, but he is clearly shown superior to 5% Deku, as Deku needed to go up to 8% to contend with Bakugo in their second fight, so Bakugo scales to 5% Deku, and tentatively 8% Deku. The point of power scaling is to determine the potential limits of characters who may lack their own feats by comparing them to hits they've taken. Obviously there's wiggle room. I'm not a fan of when two characters are compared and one of them has a very small gap in abilities above the others, and they say that's enough for them to win. When a gap is only a couple units of whatever magnitude of power they're being measured in, then the only real number of value is speed. Being slightly stronger or slightly tougher isn't immediately a winner, but being slightly faster can be a big factor. But strength is not something you compare to strength either. It shouldn't be. If one character can hit with 3 tons, but character 2 can hit with 5 tons, the point is not that character 2 is stronger. Because if character A has a durability of 20 tons, while character B's durability is stuck at 5, character A has the advantage, because they'll have an easier time getting past character B's durability. I realize I switched from character 1 and 2 to character A and B. Also, honestly, I get it was probably a joke, but saying that all versus debates devolve into autistic arguments, it's not true. Until you get to the extremes of the versus debating community, and get to the people who divulge into toxic, idiotic arguments over anything, in which case the point is meaningless. Plenty of the versus debating community will just agree to disagree. I've seen it plenty of times, with some exceptions. And generally, most people have little issue with Goku vs Superman 1 now, that they've released Goku vs Superman 2. That's where most people have issues, because Goku vs Superman 1 is just, they got the numbers wrong. But their base reasoning is just Superman stronger, which a lot of people agree with. But the reasoning in Goku vs Superman 2 that Superman is infinitely strong and could beat anyone in fiction, essentially, that can't replicate infinite strength, that's the one people don't like. Also, Meteor equates movement speed to combat speed, which is a common mistake that even Death Battle can't seem to avoid. But yes, skill and strategy is a factor, but I don't have to tell you that Team RWBY wouldn't have a hope in hell against base form Broly before Broly even started fighting Vegeta and going in power. He's not the most skilled fighter, and he can't learn anything from watching Team RWBY. None of them use Ki, which is what he fights with. If you were to go with this fight without any context for power scaling, if you got rid of power scaling and just put them against each other, Team RWBY would probably win, because you're not talking about strength, speed, and durability exclusively, you're talking about skill and stuff like that, in which they would beat Broly, but obviously they never could realistically. Anyway, Media's arguments for why RWBY wins is essentially just that the Ace Ops have no feats showing that they should be above RWBY, which is a huge flaw with Volume 7. But we have to interpret them being huntsmen, as them being within the same range as to what we've seen consistently. Every huntsman we've seen is far above Team RWBY in characters similar. Even Carmine Escalados, who considers herself way below Glinda, who is in that top range of huntresses, Carmine Escalados was able to take on, teams on her own, teams of students on her own. And she is a fully fledged huntsman like these people. Yes, Vine and Elm's teamwork is not great, but I take that as really stupid. These characters should have better teamwork, but the show needed Team RWBY to win. Yes, Vine and Elm were arguing, but Blake and Yang didn't use teamwork at all until the very end. It's only at the very end where they used teamwork. So it's not like Blake and Yang worked better as a team, it's that they're the only ones that decided to work better as a team, because Rooster Teeth didn't write Vine and Elm as using any teamwork for some reason. Yeah, Clover's missing, but as a military unit, they should have contingencies and stratagems that can work with any 1 or 2 members taken away from the unit. Now, Ruby and Harriet is a battle that I do kind of think went fine, and Weiss vs. Mara I also think is relatively fine. The problem is Yang and Blake vs. Elm and Vine, and it's really how many hits they each took. Vine, I can kind of forgive, he's probably a bit frail. Yang takes 4 blows from Elm, but is not hindered at all. She doesn't even react to it. Blake, who should be one of the frailest of Team RWBY, takes this massive blow from Elm, a big slam from Vine, and a couple other hits, and Blake is unhindered. She doesn't lose her aura, their aura flickers for a moment, and that's it. Elm, she takes 1 hit from Yang, and then is knocked out. This blow from Yang and Blake completely obliterated Elm's aura, Elm being the bulkiest and toughest of the Ace Ops except maybe Clover. Blake's punches aren't spiritual, so that means Yang's semblance is just so powerful it can obliterate anyone's aura with 1 hit. At least, you'd think, because Elm should be one of the toughest characters in the series. The issue for me isn't that RWBY won, it's how easily they won. Team RWBY never look like they're trying. The Ace Ops hit them with everything, and they get obliterated. And I'll bring up suggestions how this could be better later. Finally, Team RWBY are underdogs, and underdogs win. No, Team RWBY are not underdogs. You would be really dumb to say Team RWBY are underdogs at any point in this series, because they have won every single encounter they've had. Look at this win-loss record. The Battle of Beacon barely counts, because there wasn't just Team RWBY. Team RWBY weren't together as a unit in the Battle of Beacon, and there was a lot going on. They have a 100% win-loss record as a team, and I don't think they should have won because they had better chemistry, because they spent a whole year apart, then came back together after a year of being apart. And it's only been a couple weeks since they reunited in Volume 5. It's only been 2 weeks, and then a couple more days, and then another couple weeks. So maybe a month or month and a half since they reunited in Volume 5. And it doesn't make the writing any more dramatic or interesting if Team RWBY win every single fight, even if they shouldn't win. Anyway, let's talk about the reasons people have given, and let's go back to those. Let's start with the worst. If you have to bend over backwards for the sake of your narrative, you've done something wrong. These 4 characters that we copied have failed, so their copies also lost for the same reason. And the power of friendship can go fucking die. Now let's go through the rest. First off, the idea the Ace Ops were holding back while Team RWBY weren't. The Ace Ops were internally conflicted, and the Ace Ops let them win. The problem here is motivation. They are military soldiers, not just huntsmen and huntresses. Being able to act against your personal beliefs and ideals is important. If you cannot follow orders, you're a bad soldier. And I think a lot of people kind of ignore that when talking about them. These are characters who should be used to and should be able to work together against their own judgment to follow the orders of Ironwood. If they don't, then they should have also turned against him. Otherwise, these guys are idiots. And I know what the argument is. They're just Ironwood's little puppets. They suck and they are awful, and that's why they're conflicted. They shouldn't have their own personal judgments affecting their capabilities in the field. Imagine you have an army. You send your troops to kill the opposition in a gunfight, but then 80% of your army turns around to you and says, "You know, actually, I don't think it's right to kill people, mate." And then your army dies and your country loses the entire war. And these aren't just military soldiers, they're the ace operatives, the most skilled, experienced, and highly capable huntsmen and huntress soldiers in the entire kingdom. If anyone should be able to move past their emotions to perform effectively, it should be the Ace Ops. They can be conflicted, but unless they are shit soldiers, that shouldn't stop them. It's possible they let Team RWBY win, and that has its own issues, but that's probably the only reason for them losing this badly that I can believe. But I don't want to address that one. Because that one you could just say wait till Volume 8, they might reveal they let them win. Now anyway, the idea that Team RWBY weren't holding back and they were going full force. Are you guys really going to go around saying Team RWBY wanted to kill the Ace Ops, that's why they won? First off, that makes Team RWBY look incompetent as well because they failed to do that. Secondly, that makes Team RWBY seem like the antagonistic force here. The Ace Ops were ordered to bring in Team RWBY, but because of the bond they built, the Ace Ops couldn't bring themselves to fight it all out. Meanwhile, Team RWBY directly saw the Ace Ops taking orders and decided, yeah, I'll fucking kill these guys. That's silly. Team RWBY should have also been holding back from killing them, otherwise they seem more antagonistic than the Ace Ops. The last two are simple to deal with as well. They did train Team RWBY, but unless the Ace Ops are spectacularly incompetent, they would have used this as an opportunity to improve themselves as well. And the Ace Ops most likely would have been training themselves as well in the off time. Finally, the Ace Ops lost because they didn't work together. Yeah, they didn't. Team RWBY didn't either. As I said, Vine and Elm do work together, and their teamwork is superior to Blake and Yang for the majority of the fight because they do work in tandem, while Blake and Yang really don't until the very end. The only reason they lose is because Elm just watches Vine get taken down. Yang and Blake only use teamwork at this moment. Elm just letting Vine go down seems less like bad teamwork and more like Elm's controller unplugged. To continue a gag on this channel most of you probably don't understand. RWBY fought Harriet solo. Weiss fought Marrow solo. Speaking of Marrow, why didn't he use his semblance immediately? Like, I know why, they wanted to do the flashy cool fight scene. Why wouldn't Marrow slow them all down from the start? Maybe RWBY could escape, she might be fast enough to avoid his semblance, but this is dumb. It's not that he freezes everyone around him. In Volume 7, he clearly uses it while people are around him, and they're fine. It's just who he targeted. It's not that he's holding back and he doesn't want to hurt them. Surely, slowing them down and tying them up without fighting and beating them into submission is going to hurt them less. Heck, Vine could have used his semblance to just pick up Yang and Weiss. They got someone to tie them up while he trapped them in his creepy man hands. Blake, maybe not, because she could probably semblance out of it, and RWBY's probably too fast, but those two he could have just grabbed. The Ace Ops are so incompetent and forget their own semblances to the point of it hurting. It's not like, why doesn't Goku go Super Saiyan Blue at the start of every fight? Because that is a clear and established reason that fits his character. It's not, why doesn't Vegeta Final Flash all of his opponents? Because he has a very obvious reason that makes sense with the attack. There's no wind-up time, or charge time, or established limitations on Marrow's semblance. Now there's something media said, which is, he doesn't freeze time. That's true. People don't think that Marrow is a time-stopping character, he just slows people down. But that still could have defeated Team RWBY. And okay, I should explain why I say Team RWBY demolished the Ace Ops, totally bodied them. The Ace Ops jobbed harder than Gilberg. And it's very simple. Team RWBY don't have a single member that lost their aura. Not a single character looks like they're trying once of the members. They're animated as if they're given the bottom amount of effort. Their faces are always bored and interested ones like Saitama. They don't look like they're trying, the only exception being RWBY, who clearly looks distressed. In fact, I'll say RWBY and Harriet have the best fight in this matchup. And what I'm saying isn't Team RWBY no-sell all the attacks. What I'm saying is, the most common default expression for Team RWBY is blatant disinterest, especially after the fight. Not a single member of Team RWBY got injured in this whole fight. They overflow with confidence as if they know they've already won. In fact, even after this happens, and it looks like Blake has taken damage to her aura, she still uses her semblance, so clearly her aura is not gone. And yes, it's stated no aura, no semblance. And here are the reasons why people say Team RWBY didn't completely destroy the Ace Ops. 1. Team RWBY took a lot of hits from the Ace Ops. 2. Narratively, Team RWBY need not be injured. I can't even with this. Team RWBY tanking hits from the Ace Ops without getting hurt does not mean they had a hard fight. That's exactly why they destroyed them. Yang and Blake were eating up hits from Elm as if she was barely hurting them, but then Elm goes down from like 2 hits. Like, the Ace Ops really all that wibbly. And when did Blake become the paragon of taking hits? And no, Team RWBY didn't need to be uninjured for this volume. They don't do shit next episode. The only reason I can say don't break their auras is because they die of cold outside. But if you put on some fucking winter clothes! How could you possibly watch a fight where the protagonists all win without getting injured, without a single one having any lasting consequences from the fight in terms of their personalities or physique, and without a single one looking like they even tried, and say it was a close fight? How could you have made it close? How could you have fixed this fight? It's very simple. I have 3 points here that I think would have fixed this fight and actually made it pretty good. 1. Have Weiss fall to 1 knee after she takes down Mara. It's not great, but it would establish that she took a toll. Her semblance does tire her out, so if she had beaten Mara and then collapsed and been like, whew, that took it out of me, that would have fixed that problem. 2. Don't really change Harriet and RWBY. I know I said there's 3 steps, but this one's just, you can keep it the same. 3. Blake and Yang is the one that needs the most changes. First off, you did have a reason for why Elm did not act to help Vine. I would say maybe have Blake tie her up, or maybe have Blake attack Elm while Yang does this. Blake is unimportant to this part of the move, so if they just showed Blake stopping Elm, that would be fine, because she only needs to get in Elm's way for a moment. Not seeing her do that gives the impression that Elm didn't try. Literally just one shot of Elm running up to go help and then being stopped by Blake. After that, you have Elm fight Yang and Blake at the same time. Now, Blake's taken a lot of hits, she's used her semblance quite a bit, and Elm has very decent crowd control skills. Just have her smash Blake and knock Blake down. Not out, knock her aura out. Blake has no aura, but she's still conscious. Then, Yang and Elm can just slug it out, which would be an awesome fight if they just beat the crap out, like, get rid of their weapons and they just beat the crap out of each other with their fists, ending with both of them losing their auras. And yes, this would work, given the power discrepancy. Elm should be a lot stronger, but Yang's semblance. So it makes Yang look really powerful, because she took down an Ace Op single-handedly, pretty much. But it also makes Elm look like a beast, because she's the only character at that point who would be able to equal Yang with Yang's semblance, not counting Adam. We know for a fact Yang is pumped up from the hit she takes in the fight with Elm, so it's fine. Then, both of them are down, and instead of Yang taking Elm out, Blake hits Elm from behind and knocks her out. Considering Elm's aura is gone and Vine's right up, he can't help, Blake can just bludgeon her with the weapon. In this version of the fight, Blake and Yang barely won, and Weiss was tired out. This makes the fight more tense, more interesting, and more entertaining. Let's be honest, who went into this expecting a fight that would be close and impressive? I went in knowing for a fact that Team RWBY would win, and that it wouldn't have anything that would really make it memorable. I was pretty much right, I just didn't expect Team RWBY to win that easily. I expect them to win easily, just not that easily. Throwing in those 2 little things I suggested would just end up with a fight that fits closer with the characters, doesn't make Team RWBY look unstoppable, but rather shows that Team RWBY still have limits and they still need to grow. When they've just defeated the Ace Ops so easily, it makes it seem like there's no room to, that's like the pinnacle. You can't go up from there beyond magic. They just defeated them so easily, I can't get past that. And it would raise some narrative doubts as to whether Team RWBY could beat Salem. Now if they did, I wouldn't really be surprised. And I'll repeat, Team RWBY winning intrinsically is not the flaw. The flaw is that they win with such ease. Not a single member gets taken out, not a single member looks like they're trying, especially Blake and Yang, who pull faces like these throughout the fight, and the Ace Ops are written too stupid. Like, there's no reason for why Mary didn't slow Team RWBY or Vine didn't grab 2 members. Probably because that would mean the Ace Ops would win. Also, the way it went down is flawed. As I said, Yang took all these hits, and yes, that would boost her semblance. She still takes aura damage. She still gets hurt when she gets hit, even if it powers her semblance. Elm should be hitting harder than any character Yang has faced yet, except maybe Mercury. So while Yang would be really semblance boosted, she learnt some bullshit about not relying on her semblance, so she'd use it only at the end. Elm just keeps hitting her, and Yang should have lost her aura, and then no semblance. Taiyang was dumb. Blake taking all these hits is the dumbest thing. Like, that's just stupid. Now, if you think this is fine, and Team RWBY winning so easily was completely fine, that's okay. That is okay. I think RWBY should have lost, or the idea that Team RWBY should have had a hard victory, a hard-fought victory instead of a walk in the park, and the Ace Ops shouldn't have been written so stupidly and idiotically, and Team RWBY shouldn't have come out looking like they're just the most skilled huntsmen in the entire kingdom. But that's fine, okay? It's fine if you like this fight, okay? Also, Mediocrity said that they were chosen for their loyalty, but that's really dumb, because the moment they're given an order they personally disagree with, Harriet is the only one who doesn't hold back and hesitate. They're not good, so why would you choose for people for loyalty, but the most loyal people are the ones who would turn against you if you tell them to do something they don't agree with? How would you feel if you had a military that turned around and shot all of you if you told them to do something they didn't want to do? Oh, and I forgot that media compared the US's military issues to power scaling, and that's flawed. That's a massive false equivalency. Power scaling for versus debates takes generally the approach both fighters or teams in neutral ground fighting it out. Now, if the US military was put in a one-on-one battle against almost any other military in the world that isn't Russia or maybe China, one of those places, and both sides were given all the resources they have, who do you think would win? Probably be the US. Power scaling's equivalent of what he suggested is more like the Holy Grail War from the Nasuverse, where it's true that raw power isn't necessarily as important, strategy matters more. Also, another way this fight could have been better is it was actually a team-on-team battle where they didn't branch from the small groups of combat, they actually showed proper teamwork, and that Clover not being there leads them to hinders them. It was like here, Clover not being there doesn't hinder them at all, beyond the fact that if he was there, they would easily win because there's more of them, but because they weren't working together at all, as I said. Unless a fight's going for comedy, a fight shouldn't be a total curse storm where one side suffers no damage at all. Unless it's an antagonist winning. Then it can make it a bit more dramatic. Now let's talk about what happens in the fight itself. Okay, Ruby's line to Harriet is cringy as all get out. The scene of Yang punching looks awful. Most of the other parts of the fight look very well animated. That's all I can stomach. Let's get to the rest of the episode. Here's Robin Hill, playing into the words of a homicidal maniac and attacking a guy that wasn't going to fight anyone at all. Clover was essentially just going to tie Crow up and that's it, without any harm to anybody. And she shoots him. Oh, and Crow plays into it too. Clover just knocked Robin down. He probably would have just detained her, they'd go to Atlas and confront James. But then Crow decides to attack Clover. Tyrion's amazing though. Some people told me Winter is on Ironwood's side morally, but she's not. Like, clearly she doesn't support him. No one supports his actions personally. Harriet's probably the closest, but she never talks him fully. Why are they fighting? Like, seriously. Clover goes up, and Clover says, I don't want to fight. Let's get Robin help. And Crow's like, Oi, mate, you manipulative, mate. But why? How did Clover manipulate anyone? How did any of these events from here change it from, oh, let's not fight, let's just talk to James, mate, to, oh, mate, you're just manipulative, mate. This fight's meaningless, because Crow should have just said, yeah, and gone with it. Robin wouldn't be at risk of death, despite the fact that her being hurt and needing help is something that's completely glossed over as next episode, she's fine. And Crow has little to lose here. Not only is the end result the same, just now he doesn't have Clovey-Wovey. Unless he thinks Clover's saying he should surrender and saying that one of the reasons he should surrender is to get Robin help as him being manipulated, it's stupid. Crow doesn't need to fight. And here's the thing. People say Clover attacking Crow instead of Tyrion is because of his orders. I want to counter that by saying he has orders to get Tyrion too. He was never explicitly ordered to detain Crow, in fact. He wasn't called and told to. Crow is just someone that's listed as detained on site, and I absolutely refuse to believe that Tyrion isn't someone who's also like that. Maybe not publicly, but privately. Like, he should be considered as dangerous, generally. More dangerous than Crow is here. Clover fighting against Tyrion and detaining him first is not breaking any orders, and not going against what he's been told to do. He's been told to get both of them in. He's just stupidly attacking Crow instead of Tyrion. And, you know, when Tyrion offers to work with Crow, Crow doesn't go for it straight away. He attacks Tyrion, but Clover attacks Crow instead of Tyrion. It's just stupid! Alright, this scene. So, first off, the idea that Neo didn't detain or horrifically maim Oscar is stupid. She's perfectly willing to execute Yang in Volume 2. She's definitely the kind of person who's happy to do harm. Maybe not kill Oscar, because Cinder probably would have told her about the whole reincarnating thing, but detaining him. Why wouldn't she horrifically maim his legs so he can't move? Also, I get the point about him not... I get the point about not wanting him dead is a bit moot, because later she tries to stab him in the eye socket, but, yeah. Anyway, that's the big issue, because apparently Oscar punching Neo was not meant to be like this. According to Eddie Rivas, who works on the team, the intention was that Oscar would round a corner and punch Neo. The idea being that Neo is right next to the corner, so Neo literally would not be able to see him before he punches her, instead of him running like 5 meters for hitting him. Now yes, she doesn't acknowledge the scream in either version of this, but still, I can't get too mad at the team. It was just a minor miscommunication.
Neapolitan.
And I'm fairly certain this is the only time Neapolitan's name is said fully out loud. Is there actually a reason they took so long to put Winter in the pod? And more importantly, why isn't it Penny that went out to confront Cinder? You know, the one specifically there to protect Winter? This fight is really well animated. I feel like I should mention that without context, this is the best fight in the volume, because of how well animated it is and how good the choreography is. You could probably show this to someone who has no idea about RWBY, and they tell you it's really good. But with context... although with context, Tyrion is still amazing. So Tyrion is down. Why does Crow still attack Clover? Like, he's working with Tyrion, but he knows that once Clover is down, he's the next target. Logically, Crow should smash Tyrion's head in with his boot. And even if he did do this, shouldn't he then not talk to Clover, focus on the fight and turn back to Tyrion? Keep in mind Tyrion's tail wasn't tied up, could easily free himself. Crow is stupid. Although to be fair, Tyrion has completely vanished from this scene. And then somehow Crow doesn't see this coming. Keep in mind, this is roughly the positions they're in. This is how Tyrion's gonna move like this. Tyrion would have to go grab Harbinger, run all the way behind Clover, and stab him. All that Crow being able to see it happening beforehand. I get that it's dark, but it's still bright enough for them to get into a full battle, and there's fires from the vehicle, and it can't be that dark, because it's only a few minutes away from daybreak. Crow should have seen this coming. I mean, everyone in the audience did. But ignoring that, the way Clover actually dies is pretty brutal, and I do like that. Tyrion is one of the only effective villains from this series. Also, great voice acting from Jason. I've gushed over it before, but he does sell this scene beautifully. I'm a little bothered by the credits though. This is a total nitpick, but when it starts, it seems that there's this cool thing shows do sometimes, where like, something dramatic happens at the end of the episode, and the credits are just silent. And it's so cool when they do that. But here they played music, and it's fittingly sad music, but I would have preferred just the dead silence. I'm very mixed on this Neo fight. On one hand, it's amazing and I love it. It's perfect for her and Team Juniper. On the other hand, it's fan servicey nonsense that has no worth in the volume. It's awesome to watch, but narratively you could take it out and lose nothing. So I'm not going to make a comment. Cinder's swords look really nice. Cinder tries to get some motivation in, but just... it's been years since she first showed up. This is one of the only times her motivation is even brought up. Nobody cares anymore. Some people might be like, oh, finally motivation. But it seems a lot of people are just like, who cares? Also, she's saying this stuff to Winter, a character who does not apply to her spiel. You know which of these characters would want to hold on to their power forever and don't really care if it makes people hungry? Jacques, the bad guy. Ironwood used his power to specifically try and keep people safe, regardless of how it affects him personally, until this very episode. Winter and all the soldiers, they're just following orders. And Penny? No. Now, with context, this probably might be the best fight in the volume because it's unique and it's creative and the sky battle is really well animated, even though it's stupidly short. Here's one issue I have. Winter essentially loses her aura after one hit. What is it with Elysians in this volume and just not being able to take more than 1 or 2 hits before their aura breaks? Anyway, I've said in podcast that I really think Winter should have done more, and I think she should have summoned a bunch more things and just really gone all out. Like, let us see just how much more powerful Winter is than Weiss. Without this goes down, it makes her look so much weaker than Weiss, when a single summon is broken as she goes down from one fireball, and a super casual baby doll fireball too. And against a maiden, skill isn't much of a factor. They don't have time to strategize, so Winter, who is perfectly willing to throw herself away for the sake of Atlas, should have just unleashed everything she has to try and take Cinder out as fast as possible. Or try and leave Cinder open for a Penny Mark on Kosapo. Penny should have really broken her back there. I would just say, it's a nitpick, I know. Shut up. You think Team Juniper would want to keep more of an eye on Oscar, given he's the slowest motherfucker and he's like 14 and like he can't defend himself and he's got the fucking lamp, you idiots? Just have Nora pick him up and carry him. Cinder's an idiot. She takes so fucking long to get the maiden powers. She should have just stabbed her. Like, just not slowly, but like, whoop, stab Fear in the boob and take her powers. It's too cold. It'll burn your glove off, but stick your whole head in and without aura, mind you, you'll be fine.
It's too cold. We have to do something.
Yeah, she's still far away, but she doesn't move further back after she gets, like, she recoils back, but her body, spatially, the whole thing doesn't move back. So this is clearly her head going even closer. Here's the scene where they straight up tell us to fuck off with our philosophical and moral debates. Do the ends justify the means? Fuck you. This is one of the worst looking shots in the whole series, wow.
She's mine!
Great voice acting there. Winter is a badass here though. Without aura, she takes on a maiden and survives. It's more impressive than what she could accomplish with the aura when you think about it. Winter looks great with her hair down, by the way. This scene kind of shows off just how little tension we can expect. RWBY can single-handedly, on a whim, with no repercussions, delete Grimm and obliterate the second most powerful antagonistic force in the series, unless you count Raven. Penny, who's already strong enough to match Cinder, now has maiden powers, and Oscar is beginning to learn magic from a guy who could also match a maiden. I like how Winter goes about letting Weiss go though. I can't take this fire breath seriously. Seriously. Team RWBY successfully beat the most skilled huntsman in Atlas, succeed in acquiring one of the strongest characters in the show on their side, foil part of Cinder's big plan, and don't fail at anything. Team Juniper lose Oscar, lose the Relic, lose the fight against Neo, and come back looking like sacks of shit. Why is Robin detained? Did Clover off-screen just call the cops to get them? Yang must be so confused in this scene. Oh, and then Salem shows up. And this is the only scene with flying Baringals, and you can barely see them too. They better give a really fucking good explanation for why Salem didn't do this from just the start. Alright, so, that was Volume 7. Did I hate it? No, Volume 7 is not that bad, and definitely better than the last two volumes. I don't want to hate, and I don't want to even dislike RWBY. The franchise means a lot to me, and I really hope Volume 8 is even better than this one. Volume 7 is one of the better volumes in this franchise, and I really hope Volume 8 is at least just as good. Also, there's this like recurring line from a couple people in this series that's like, the timeline has changed, and I'm like, yeah, you don't have to tell me. A line through time. With RWBY, it's a line through bullshit.